Welcome to the CEC Report for the 21st of October 2016. My name's Elisa Barwick and joining me today is our Victoria State Chairman Jeremy Beck. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Elisa.
And on today's show, an independent Australia would block, not support, nuclear and cyber warfare plans. And secondly, we don't need a revolution in welfare, but in economics. Now, on our first item today, the Syria situation, the crisis there, as we've been talking about in recent shows, is still very much a short fuse that can set off World War III at any moment. Between superpowers, it's already been admitted as a proxy war, but it could lead to a hot war between the United States and Russia, which we are a very clear part of, as we'll talk about. And you can see this very clearly in the ongoing demonisation of Russia and of Putin, as we saw a very classic example today on the front cover of The Economist. So just by way of a quick example of that, before we get started, I want to refer to an article in this week's Australian Alert Service, which people can contact us to get a copy of, which is a report on the recent investigation and the report of that investigation into the crash of MH17, the Malaysian Airlines flight over the Ukraine. And it's headlined, MH17 investigation proves a blatant stitch-up. And I just want to read the first paragraph. Russia invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea. Syrian government forces and/or the Russians bombed a UN humanitarian convoy on the road to Aleppo. Assad is using chemical weapons against the Syrian people. Putin ordered the hacking of the US Democratic Party's emails in order to make Donald Trump president. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Russian-backed separatist fighters in Ukraine's Donbass shot down Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 on 17 July 2014. How many of these assertions have you heard stated as fact or with a slight qualification like intelligence agencies are confident that ... back in 2003, 2013, 2014 or last month? Some of them have been painstakingly proven false already, like the falsified evidence used to justify the Anglo-American-led invasion of Iraq 13 years ago. Others have been challenged with strong contrary evidence, yet you may still believe they are true because the media keeps saying so and intelligence agencies keep signalling their confidence. Now, this report, which goes on in the Australian Alert Service to dissect the detail and the lies that have been presented in this report, is crucial reading. So contact us for a copy of that because it'll allow you to understand what's going on here with the lies and the propaganda. Now, there's a major breaking story, though, that's occurring now in the light of this push to World War III, and that is the fact that US Vice President Joe Biden has made a threat of cyber warfare against Russia, and we'll just roll the clip of him suggesting this.
Why haven't we sent a message yet to Putin?
We're sending a message. We have the capacity to do it, and the message
He'll know it?
he'll know it, and it'll be at the time of our choosing, and under the circumstances that have the greatest impact. The capacity to fundamentally alter the election is not what people think, and I tell you what, to the extent that they do, we will be proportional in what we do, and
So a message is going to be sent. Will the public know it?
I hope not.
Now, NBC also cited insiders saying that the CIA has been asked to deliver options to the White House for a wide-ranging clandestine cyber operation designed to harass and embarrass the Kremlin leadership. And this is all in response to purported Russian interference in the US election, which again is another one of these things that remains unproven, like the list I gave earlier. Now, Jeremy, a cyber war depends upon intercepting communications and intelligence. That is how, that's today's spying. That's the James Bond of today, right? And Australia actually has a central role because we're part of what's known as the Five Eyes. And we also have a central role in any nuclear war as well, which is a crucial thing to discuss. Can you explain what Australia's role is in these two capacities?
The Five Eyes program was set up after World War II. It's an alliance between 5 countries: Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United Kingdom and United States. And it's an intelligence signals system for intelligence where they can tap into phone calls, into emails, into people's Facebook accounts, you name it. They monitor numerous calls through very sophisticated computer software where they can have voice recognition.
Yeah, right.
You're basically looking at spying on everyone.
Because one example of how they use that when Obama runs these drone strikes, for example, and we did a program on the show a while ago, they intercept cell phones to actually target, and these are extrajudicial assassinations that are taking place, and this is relayed through Pine Gap. And in a nuclear war, Pine Gap would be crucial. And why is that? I mean, our geographical location is key, isn't it?
Yeah, geographically, signals from satellites cannot go straight through the Earth from one side to the other. So this area right near China, which the United States is definitely targeting in the South China Sea, they need those satellite signals and receivers in Australia, such as in Pine Gap, to take these signals and relay those signals to warships, to submarines, to aeroplanes. This is targeting China, setting Australia up to be involved in World War III, where we will be a target. It is absolutely crazy.
Well, yeah, if there's a nuclear first strike, because we also play a key role in the ballistic missile defence of the United States, and if there is a nuclear first strike, then we are going to be key in that retaliation. In other words, the United States will want to stop any retaliatory attack. And therefore, we're going to be a primary target. Anyone, say if Russia has been just struck and they're going to retaliate before even the nuke reaches them, then it's going to come to us. We're a primary target. Now, we also provide a unique capacity here to intercept Russian and Chinese satellite communications and radars, detecting stealth planes, and we have a very crucial role in communications for the US subs and their groups of ships and so forth.
And also in the drones, you have these extrajudicial killings where anyone with a mobile phone can be targeted. And Obama, he has these kill sessions every single Tuesday. You know, he targets people to be killed. Now, what if you had some innocent women and children? Or too bad, you know.
Well, there's plenty of them that have been killed.
And this is what's happening all the time.
Exactly. Now, it appears that in fact, this kind of cyber warfare against Russia might have already started, because on the 12th of October, the British bank NatWest announced that it will close the bank accounts of RT, what was formerly known as Russia Today, which is the state broadcaster of Russia in the United Kingdom. And of course, this bank NatWest is part of the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, which is a majority government owned, so that really sends a signal. And the Russian embassy responded saying that this is an openly political decision and it's a violation of UK obligations under the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which say that you can't hinder journalists in their lawful activities. And the other thing that happened was that the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's internet was cut off after he released the latest trove of emails revealing Hillary Clinton's speeches to Goldman Sachs. So this may be well underway, but we've got to stop there for a break and we'll be back very shortly. Welcome back to the CEC Report, where we're discussing the threat of World War III. Now, this threat by Vice President Biden to Russia is typical of what you see coming from the United States and from the United Kingdom, who have been the greatest warmongers. They've created a whole series of wars for the purpose of regime change, which is wreaking havoc throughout that region, the refugees that are flooding the rest of the world, etc. And yet everything is blamed on Russia and Syria. And so by way of countering the extreme propaganda that is out there, especially at the moment around the situation in Aleppo, where you're hearing all the civilian casualties being blamed on Russia and Syria that are going after ISIS, they're going after these terrorists by the UN mandate that they have, and compare that to Mosul, where you're hearing in Iraq about America going in there to wipe out the terrorists, but all the casualties there are being blamed on, you know, suicide bombers and ISIS using people as human shields, etc. So it couldn't be more stark. So I want to show here, so people get a sense of this, because people in the West don't see this at all. Two clips. The first is from Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and the second is from his wife Asma al-Assad.
All Western media take information about situation in Syria from this strange organization, Syrian Observatory of Human Rights.
Yeah.
But I understood it's just one-man band.
One man living in London.
I don't understand this. I was shocked when I knew. I mean, how they can use this like source of information?
Yeah, because that's what the West wants. They don't need anything real. They need somebody to promote any information that suits their agenda. And they promote it as a real one, as a fact. And as you know now, most of the people in the West are brainwashed regarding what's going on in Syria and maybe in Ukraine. I mean, the same. In Russia, they try to, and they succeeded and brainwashed their public opinion, and this is one of the tools. So it's not the only one. They have many tools, similar tools, like the white helmets recently.
Who are they?
Actually, they work with al-Nusra in the area that's controlled by al-Nusra. How can you work in the same area if you're not under the control of al-Nusra? More importantly, many of their members, there's videos and pictures of them celebrating the death of Syrian army soldiers. They're celebrating on their bodies.
Not long time ago, you mean when America was bombing now Syrian army? You mean this case?
No, in different areas, in Aleppo.
In different areas,
In Aleppo, you had fights, and they picture themselves over the bodies of Syrian soldiers, the white helmets with al-Nusra. So this is changing of the package of al-Nusra under the title of white helmet, that the good people who are sacrificing their lives to help the others and children, and this emotional picture that would affect the public opinion in the West.
And we even don't know from where these pictures.
Sorry?
Nobody knows from where these pictures.
They don't verify anything. It's not important. Now in the internet you can find anything. You cannot verify anything on the internet. You just watch, you feel emotional because the picture in Syria should be black and white. The good people versus the bad army or the bad president or bad government or the bad official, let's say. This is the only picture they wanted to have in order to convince their public opinion that we can continue pressuring the Syrian, that they are supporting the good Syrian people against their bad government, and so on. You know this propaganda.
But what will give you liberation of Aleppo in strategic point?
Aleppo, we call it the twin of Damascus for many reasons. It's the second big city in Syria. Damascus is the capital, political capital, while actually Aleppo is the industrial capital in Syria.
But no industry now anymore there. Everything crashed.
No, exactly. No, most of the factories in Aleppo, they don't work. They were taken to Turkey.
But if you will take Aleppo, what it will change in war?
Because it's the second
city, but what
city.
you can cut al-Nusra from...
No, first of all, it has political gain, on the strategic level, political gain, national gain. Then from the strategic point of view, military point of view, you don't cut. It's going to be the springboard as big city to move to another areas, to liberate another areas from the terrorists.
But,
this is the importance of Aleppo now.
Okay, it's liberation, but what's your next step? How to cut this connection between Turkey and Idlib? Because this is the main source, mainstream of money, soldiers, everything.
You cannot cut because Idlib is adjacent to Turkey. It's right on the Syrian-Turkish border. So you cannot cut. You have to clean. You have to keep cleaning this area and to push the terrorists to Turkey to go back to where they come from or to kill them. There's no other options. So, but Aleppo is going to be very important springboard to do this move.
Much has been said about the humanitarian situation in Syria, but in truth, the severity of the situation is beyond comprehension. The displacement, the poverty, the sickness, the suffering is possibly unprecedented. Ironically, Western media organizations have chosen to solely focus on the plight of refugees and those caught up in rebel-held areas, whereas in fact the vast majority of people displaced are living across the rest of the country. And these people, as much as anybody else, matter. And nobody has the right to dehumanize them based on the lines of a map. Now, in terms of our aid efforts, we are of course extending emergency humanitarian assistance, but there's also an urgent need to restore people's ability to access public services. And this is very, very important. Beyond this, there are programs that are in place that offer psychosocial services, vocational training, and small interest-free loans. Educational support is also provided to children who are struggling or have been out of school for a long period of time.
And the last question, during all the war times, you didn't flee the country. Did someone recommend you to flee to save your life, and what was your response?
Well, you're right on both counts. First of all, I've been here since the beginning, and I never thought of being anywhere else at all. And secondly, yes, I was offered the opportunity to leave Syria, or rather to run from Syria. These offers included guarantees of safety and protection for my children, and even financial security. It doesn't take a genius to know what these people were really after. It was never about my well-being or my children. It was a deliberate attempt to shatter people's confidence in their president. And suffice to say, these offers were foolish and not even made by people who were Syrian.
It's amazing, Elisa, the double standards and also the Western media, you don't see any of this at all.
No.
And it's absolutely criminal. If people knew, if they actually just hop on the internet and watch Assad for himself, he sounds very reasonable. He doesn't sound like some raving lunatic or warmonger that you get this image of him in the mainstream press.
Yeah, they're ordinary people. You know, she was an investment banker in London and so forth. He was an ophthalmologist, and he didn't particularly want to be a leader, but he was put into that position, as was she. But Jeremy, how can people help counter this propaganda?
Well, go and see your Member of Parliament. Look, say we need to get out of Syria. Sign our petition. We have a petition, get out of Syria. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbours, talk to anyone, get the message out. Hop on our website, all the details are on there.
And call us if you want more information. We will send you multiple copies to get out to people that you know. So we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the CEC Report. We don't need a revolution in welfare, but in economics. Now, the economic and financial crisis that Australia and the world is going through created a revolt against major political parties at the last election, which saw a record vote for minor parties and for independents. Now, what people are reacting to are the policies of the last 40 years or so that have destroyed and wiped out our productive sector, agriculture, and this has been referred to as the post-1983 economic consensus, which was when the era, with the floating of the dollar, liberalisation of all policies, trade policies, deregulation, privatisation was everywhere. It just took over and destroyed our economy. And we've seen this, recently, and talked in various shows recently about the effect on the dairy industry and other agriculture, the steel industry, the auto industry, and effects on vital aspects of the economy such as, our power sector, without which nothing can happen. And green policies, as we've discussed, have contributed to that and been a part of that too. But on the 20th of September, the Minister for Social Services, Christian Porter, announced a quote-unquote welfare revolution, which is an extension of exactly the same policies, the cost-cutting approach, austerity, etc. Now, Jeremy, you wrote an article for our latest Australian alert service on this subject, and you started by saying, we don't have a welfare problem, we have a poverty problem in a collapsing economy. But before we talk about that, can you first explain what this welfare revolution is?
It's a policy where the government will use actuarial analysis and pay various different professionals millions of dollars to target specific groups for welfare cuts. Now, they put a lot of spin on it, but at the end of the day, bottom line, it's about cutting billions and billions of dollars out of the welfare budget. And it'll hit the unemployed, it'll hit pensioners, old age, disability pensioners, students, carers. It'll hit every one of these targeted groups. At the end of the day, there are not the jobs there for the unemployed. For every single job vacancy, there are 20 people looking for that same job.
And some up to 100, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Some jobs, yeah.
I mean,
more even.
I remember years ago when I was unemployed, even back in the 1990s, I was applying for jobs which were, I was an engineer and there were 200 or 300 people applying for the same job even back then. It's worse now because we've lost a lot of our manufacturing industry. So this is really criminal because people are just left on the scrap heap. Now, in New Zealand, they tried this policy and it was a failure. Actually, the Auckland City Mission highlighted that there's double the number of homeless people sleeping on the streets.
After the policy.
People couldn't get access to the welfare. They had to prove that they're looking for jobs. The jobs are not there.
And the thing is that it's not welfare that has caused our collapsing economy. I mean, they're doubling back on the problem and making the problem worse. And I mean, some of what they went on about launching this policy was that they did a statistical analysis with sophisticated algorithms of to assess the entire system. I mean, why don't they do that to the banks? Why don't they go after the other institutions that are looting and destroying our economy? But you see where this is coming from when, as you discovered, the One Nation MPs that was elected on the back of this policy revolt, Malcolm Roberts, hired an advisor who is an advocate of the economic school which created all these policies of deregulation and free trade, which is the Austrian School of Economics. Can you explain what that school is and what these policies are doing?
The Austrian school has its origins in the late 19th century. Karl Menger set it up. He was really working on behalf of the oligarchical families, the royal families in Europe and so forth. And they saw the American system of political economy as a great threat to their system, which is in effect feudalism, an old aristocratic system where you have the rich and the noble and then you have everyone else who are just treated like animals, human cattle. And they saw the American system as a threat. It was taken on, that system was taken on by Prussia, who were having great industrialisation policies, and Japan and numerous countries around the world. And this oligarchy was seeing that their whole system was at threat. So it was based on this so-called free market freedom, nominally freedom, only free for the very rich. If you're poor, well, too bad. And individual rights. But the state didn't have any sense of intervening under the Austrian school.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to.
They weren't allowed to intervene to protect industry or protect the general welfare. So really, this liberalism goes back to an ideology even further of Bernard de Mandeville, who had this idea of private,
private
individual,
vices.
the individual could have all these vices, and then as a whole, the society would somehow benefit from
all of that.
Callous ideas of the individual.
Yeah. Now you can read more about that in our Australian Alert Service because you can see how it's only the strong and the powerful that will benefit under such a system, which is just a rot, and it's allowing the banks to loot us with derivatives and so forth. So call in for a copy of that and find out more and get to your MP as we said earlier. Thanks for tuning into the CEC Report. Thanks for joining me, Jeremy.
Thanks, Elisa.
And we'll see you again on next week's show.